Hi, everybody. I am Sue Hillyard, and I am here today with Rav Chahal. Hey, Rav.
Hi, Sue.
And we are doing our next episode in our series, Astro Coffee, interviews with your favorite astrologers. And today, our favorite astrologer is Joe Molloy. Hey, Joe.
Hi Sue, hi Rav, hello everyone. Thank you for tuning in, joining and watching.
Yes, welcome.
I
So,
like this introduction, Sue. Thank you.
uh,
Um, I
well,
don't know.
Joe has been very gracious to allow us to look at his chart as we talk about his journey with astrology. So, shall we dive in? Okay. So, let's start off with how does your chart show? Well, just tell us about your journey with astrology and how it shows in your chart.
Okay.
How you came to astrology and you know.
I was I was born in the 60s. And I was born into a very lovely and very loving family. But a lot of the family values were kind of tightly packed. It's as though they'd been the same for a long time and they'd inherited from their parents' generation and so on and so on. And although we lived in I suppose it was 1920s, but a modern-ish house with water that came out the taps, and we had electricity, and that's just like normal. Well, normal for me because that's what I was born into. And so, what was also normal for me, the world I was born into, was one where we didn't have astrology, right? So, picture this lovely, quiet Catholic family where children come and ask their parents, can we go on holiday with so and so family down the road? Because they go with the other family. We don't do that sort of thing. No, and we didn't go to other families' churches because there might be something in there that would challenge the family view, the Catholic view. And underneath everything, underneath this veneer, right, was a sort of, I believe, was a fear that if we didn't follow the line, and as parents, if my mum and dad didn't guide my sister and myself and we followed the line, then it's like the yellow brick road, the Wizard of Oz. I don't know if anyone listening has ever seen that, but you just do not
Of
go off the
course.
path. And astrology was way off the path. I remember a friend of mine, um, Philip, my first yoga teacher, and he said back in the 1950s, he was one of the first people to bring Indian yoga teachers to Britain. And it was this, I don't know what the comparison would be, maybe something like shamanic healing, the other string to my bow. That back then, if you said to the local vicar, because they would have village halls, if you said to them, we want to use your hall for a yoga class, it was almost, we're going to invite the devil to come in and summon up evil, horrible powers. And so there wasn't really any astrology. There were moon and stars above us in the evenings. That was really lovely. The only the only astrology we had was this like coffee table astrology. And even going into my teens, I remember like magazine astrology, and it was compelling. Sometimes I'd have to open it to have a look. Where are the four lines that relate to me and then to every single person born with their sun in Cancer? Then after a while, that all seemed to make no sense at all. I thought maybe there's one person here who's getting all of this. Tomorrow you will be lucky. The day after, a brick will fall from the sky and you will know it as a signy sign. Right? Doesn't make any sense. And it got worse. It really did. We had, without any disrespect, right? Because some of this is just for entertainment. We had a show in the UK TV back in the 80s, Rav, you might remember. And there was a lady would come on towards the end of the show, and her stage name was Mystic Meg. And
I knew
she
you were going to say that. So I knew Mystic Meg was coming out your mouth.
She was brilliant. She was really engaging in what
Mm.
I'm going to say as I remember it and recall it now. I believe was just a load of total nonsense. May the balls be lucky for you tonight. And it was a mixture of all sorts of things. But by the time I got to my late teens and early 20s, something had happened. Oh, I'd moved out of my parents' house. Um, and I guess I could spend my evening doing different things, reading different books, sketching and drawing different things, and I didn't feel like I was being overlooked. Now, when I look at these events in my life now, of course, from a more informed astrological perspective, I know, for example, about things like planetary returns. And sometimes the seemingly coincidental, totally random events in people's lives. In my life, as I look back and I think now, oh yes, this particular planet that holds this kind of story, this theme, this archetypical energy, it had made its way all the way around the sky, all the way around the sun. Yep, in that amount of time. And although I wasn't conscious of it, I could feel the effect. Something liberating, something freeing up. Um, so it hadn't occurred to me to jump back to this when I was thinking before we spoke this evening, what drew me into astrology. But there was something happening that made it possible to begin to embrace it much more around my late 20s, late teens, early 20s. And I don't know if it was one thing or another. So many things were calling to me. And if anything connects them, it was that I wanted to find my spiritual path, my path to spirituality. Yes, there's so many ways of saying it, but I wasn't looking for a religion or an anything, no particular isms. Remember that John Lennon sang that song, Give Peace a Chance, but in the choruses, everybody's talking about thisism, thatism, bagism, shagism. They all rhyme, don't they? But some of them are a bit naughty. And so there'd be astrologyism. It's all in there. Um, and I guess I started to draw charts for people in my early 20s. Um, I had the opportunity to get loads and loads of books because I joined this book club thing.
Ah,
Yeah, you know these things. It's of its time when we didn't have online things and PDF documents, and this will be a foreign and inconceivable period of history to many people who were born after the start of all this stuff, after the middle 90s. We didn't have any of this. Um, and I'd asked my friend said to me for my birthday one year, she said, "What would you like?" And I said, "I'd like a compass." It didn't occur to me to specify it was one for drawing circles. And she was so happy she'd found this thing for me. She gave me this little box, my birthday present, and I opened it up. And I wasn't as rehearsed then at hiding my disappointment in gifts. Oh, I've got 3 of those already, Father Christmas. Thank you very much. I would just express emotionally. I did that to Father Christmas once. Yes. At my dad's works Christmas party, Father Christmas gave me a big box. It was great. It was a big box. I took it back. We sat down as a family. I was allowed to unwrap it, and I already had one. And I couldn't be grateful for the gift. I just burst into tears. But
oh,
I know. That's
Cancer
me.
ascendant.
Yeah. Yes. So there's a huge amount of emotional energy. I think in my chart, a lot of Cancer energy, and
a whole lot. Yeah. Yeah. And I also have a Cancer ascendant, so I feel you.
it's hard not to. You know, this
Yeah.
is the crab was the crab before the crab had the shell. The crab created the shell to provide an extra layer of insulation and security. We feel, I'm going to say this for everyone who has a lot of Cancer energy, the archetype of Cancer in their chart, because I think it's true. You know, whether it's the moon placement, the Cancer, the sign on the ascendant, or where it is, or what planets are in Cancer. But yeah, that kind of sums it up. I feel you. We do.
Mm.
unavoidable, original, genuine empathy.
Yeah.
I started drawing charts. She took me back into W.H. Smith's, which is our big sort of stationery superstore on the high street here at the time. And you know, it was like she's the same. She's a year younger than me, and she took me like my mum. She took me to the department, and she said, "Now show me which one you want." Okay, and I found this little stainless steel one. I've now got a selection of compasses. I think I've got almost the world's biggest compass. It's about this long, and it'll draw circles that are this wide. Well, my big chart in the corner here, it'll do that one. So once people realized I could just draw their charts, you know, I had my compass, colored pencils, and the most important thing was my ephemeris. Right now, this lovely chart has come from Astro Gold, isn't it? And I've got the same software, and it does it all really quickly for you and makes astrology even more super accessible for people. Because it doesn't make, to me, it doesn't make any sense up here. I need to see it. In fact, I need, even if I'm talking to someone about their reading on a screen, I need to sometimes put my hands on the screen and get literally a feel for what's there, even though the texture on the screen is flat. My brain will tell me there's nothing there to feel. You know, it's just the screen. But I can feel the energy through my fingers, through my hands, or at least somehow that's how it works for me. And when it becomes alive for me, I think that's what comes across to other people. They feel the aliveness in the chart. When you talk about their chart or anyone, it comes to life. And I suppose this is also where it marries up for me, wearing my other hat as a shaman. That everything, in some way, as I experience it, has its own animistic nature or life force, personality. And so astrology offers me an opportunity to look at all of these different personalities as if looking at a theater performance.
So,
William
Joe, did your shamanism develop in parallel with the astrology?
I think my interest in astrology grew and grew from that point, as it did with many things from my early 20s, so the last 40 years. But after experimenting with drawing people's charts, I'm not quite sure, as I think back about it, where that all went. It disappeared into the background somewhere, but was still sort of working. And I remember actually in my mid-20s, I bought this lovely live wood charm from a shaman called Dusty Miller, who's passed from this life now. And he used to create, I don't know, I've got one here. He would create wands or little like circular discs, things like this, that were taken from the tree in a certain way, that they harvested a part of the soul or consciousness with the tree's permission. And I the first one I received, I'll get there in a minute. How am I going to justify that? My Pluto's in the third house. It's got that Gemini. It's not just that not enough information coming in is enough. It's not enough going out. I have to keep telling you and telling you.
Well, and you also have Mars and Venus in Gemini in the 12th house. So,
Yeah.
I mean, you know, okay, carry on.
Short answer. There's no short answer. On the bottom of this, on the front of the leaflet that came with this little stick, it said suitable. It was called a healer's friend, and it helped to work to guide energy in your healing practice. And it said suitable for acupuncturists, reflexologists, shiatsu practitioners, and shaman. And I got to the bottom bit, and I thought, oh God, no, right, well, that's not me, right. And I wasn't an acupuncturist, a shiatsu practitioner, or a reflexologist, so I didn't know how I was going to use it. But there was something about that word shaman. Um, and I think anything that we have, for me, anything I feel a strong attraction towards or an aversion, I want to explore a little bit. I want to know, if I've never met this thing in my life before, like snakes, I've never seen many snakes. And yet I really like to keep them at a distance. But the archetype of serpent as applied to a snake is so useful, it's so integral in my work as a shaman. And I thought maybe in some past lifetime or somewhere in my family, and I got it as an epigenetic inheritance. This sort of imprint in my DNA is this fear of showing up or practicing or being seen as a shaman, medicine person, or healer. Maybe because what happened, what is it, like 300 years ago, something like that, 200, 200 and something to 300 years ago, our ancestors executed them all because they were not compliant enough or Christian enough. And for the women, they were not men enough. And it was this horrible period. Well, we all know it, but it's sometimes people who've had incarnations, I believe, in those times, or have a memory through their ancestries, have a reaction to this. And then it was, where are we now? The years leading up to 2012. And I've been through a lot of different life events. My partner, for some time, had died of cancer. I'd been working through grief. I've been on my own. I had some up moments. I had some real down moments. And all of the breakdowns were kind of like a breakthrough. And there was something about the energy and the expectations. 2012. Some people say it's the end of the world because it's the end of the Mayan calendar. Someone witty then said, "Let's take this off. I had to find something round. Here's my Mayan calendar. There's the Mayan calendar." And someone said, "Yeah, let's leave the other side blank. That'll freak him out." There's no future. There's nothing on the other side. So something was going on then, and I don't think it was as just caught up in a wave of interest. Yeah, I felt it. I felt drawn to it, and this was around this time, about 2008 to 2010. I started listening to some evolutionary astrology podcasts or things on YouTube, and it just made sense to me. Yeah. I stepped into my work as a shaman, kind of bringing together other healing practices, modalities I've been using, and also, beginning to get a real experience of what evolutionary astrology might be about, and what it offers, and its history, and its rich kind of threads that go back to yogis in India. Excuse me, so just my leg there. And I thought, and I remembered even within that in my early 20s, when Philip, the guy I mentioned, was teaching our classes, he introduced me to a book. I've got my pile of books to talk about later, but he introduced me to Autobiography of a Yogi.
Yeah.
Paramahansa Yogananda. If you're watching this, if you haven't got one of these, get it. It's an amazing book. And get the bigger one because it's got more little notes, annotations at the bottom, and they bring the stories to life. And without bringing the stories to life, it doesn't really mean quite so much, I find. And two of the key characters within this are Paramahansa Yogananda himself, who wrote it, and Sri Yukteswar, who was his teacher, his guru. And then I step into evolutionary astrology, and I'm trying to watch every video, every recording that has been archived or kept of Jeffrey Wolf Green talking about this work. And he's talking about the same things, or he's kind of bringing them in and talking about their teachings. And it was like I had come full circle. Yes, so something had been seeded in my life back in my 20s, and I'd remembered it. And I remember reading this book. And then it all came to life again later on. I may be at the moment a little bit like a little sailing boat, right? With a little sail and a rudder, and I'm just following my own direction. So if I wander off too far, nudge me or just enjoy the show.
No, it's great. I'm enjoying listening to and I keep thinking about all of the different, Gemini, Virgo signatures that you have. I mean, you mentioned your Pluto in the third house. Well, it's in Virgo as well, you know. So I mean, the amount of details and
Storytelling.
yeah, storytelling, exactly. It's wonderful.
But if you asked me
Yeah.
what I did yesterday, I probably couldn't tell you very clearly. All of this.
House, very Gemini. But do you know what, Joe? Just to show the audience, if you're looking at your chart, just to pick up the configurations in your chart, if you look at your house of work and house of career, house of work, sixth house is ruled by Sagittarius, which we know in EA is very much linked to natural law. And your 10th house is Pisces, so the house of career and how the world will kind of see you. Pisces, the ruler being Neptune and Scorpio, it's like your initial work was always going to be shamanic, linked to natural law, shaman. And you mentioned it just before, like past trauma. Your south node of Uranus is in Sagittarius in that sixth house. So yes, very likely past lifetimes of um, you know, trauma experience through wanting to even teach natural law, practicing natural law. And we do carry that through lifetimes because we're deconditioning from it. So that kind of, your early childhood environment, such a perfect example. It's sort of like your parents' role was to protect you from being judged, discriminated, just that keeping you in that little cancer cocoon, protection, and just let's just do the right thing and live a good life, if you know what I mean.
South Node and
And
Capricorn.
South Node in Capricorn, because of the repression, suppression of previous lifetimes. And incidentally, you mentioned that EA came to you around 2008. If I'm correct, Sue, that was when Pluto had gone into Capricorn, linking to your South Node in the sixth house. So it was always going to, open those doors of the past to bring you back to the teachings which you are very familiar with. They're a part of your DNA. And yeah, it's just, astrology continues to amaze me and it always does. Those timelines are so important and integral to the soul's journey. And the choice point that comes up, and we spoke about this before we started recording, is how we utilize the energy. And you've just been following those breadcrumbs. Like you said, you went back to the 20s and you were like, right, okay, it was seeded then. It's like it was being watered, right? You were planting, the seed was just growing
Yeah.
and it continues to grow.
I don't know if I've ever really had a plan, and your kind of image of the breadcrumbs sort of follows it up. I only know where I'm going when I look back and see where I've come from, and then it makes sense. But
Yeah.
otherwise, I'm just going for the next thing and the next thing. And my moon, right? There's my moon in
Mm.
air, and for me, that speaks to that. Is that for me? So the moon is how I see myself, the
Mm.
identity that I show to my son, not my son, my sun, is the face that I show that the world sees. So I see that too
Yeah.
because they reflect it back to me. Um, so I am who I am. I am what I'm doing,
Mm.
and it's almost like it becomes a timeless kind of quality as well. That I know. So I'm surprised that I'm like into my 60s now because I think, how did that actually get here? How did that get here? This sort of disassociate. How did I get here? Well, it's this one breadcrumb at a time.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so 2008-ish, somewhere around about there. And it kind of, grief, losing someone, um, dying in a prolonged way, cancer, and it's horrible.
Mm.
Yes, it's
And
horrible for the person who dies, and horrible to watch it, witness it too.
at
But
that time, Pluto would have been going over your series, which is,
Mm.
has to do with grief and
um,
loss and all of that as well.
I didn't realize I was grieving.
Yeah, of course not. No, because you were deep into the caretaking and the feeling of, of what was going on,
Mm. And
I would imagine.
that feels like a nicer way of saying it, maybe more charitable than the way I say it to myself. I feel like I was unable to recognize it because then I would have felt my pain.
That
So I
too.
shoved it right out of my kind of conscious field
Sure.
for some time. Um, but it became a catalyst.
Mhm.
It propelled me back into healing arts um, and jazz music. I mentioned jazz music. I hadn't thought about that before.
Oh,
Uh,
wow. You're,
just listening, I don't play jazz. I'm a very humble folk style Neil Young, Bob Dylan guitar player.
aw.
Yeah, but it did seem to start an accelerating journey. And, there is something I don't talk about a lot at all. I'm very careful until I decide I'm going to take a chance and then never know what's going to happen. But some years on in this journey, and I'd connected with a wonderful lady who I know you both know, Kristin Fontana. And we started off, and it was someone that I knew who said, here's this person. Instead of you could listen to that person you've been listening to all the time, but I think you're going to like this more. So I said, yeah, okay. Right, okay. So I had a look at the website, booked a reading, and it was lovely, interesting. But then the second reading, so some months later, I thought, I'm going to have another one. It started, we felt like we got more connected and the process started to deepen. And after a while, we sort of I would share a little bit more about what's going on for me. And we become friends, which is really, really lovely. And so I was able to tell her about these unusual experiences. I'm going to mention it because some of the people watching may have experiences like this and they may be worried that it's not a good thing because it's an unusual thing to have dreams that are so lucid that you're having a conversation with other people and you can hear their voice and distinguish it, and sometimes you can see their faces. But for me, my experience prior to that was hearing stories about other people who had similar experiences. And I thought the last thing I want is to appear like I'm piggybacking on someone else's story
Mm.
to make myself seem special. So, you know, you're probably looking at the chart, not looking at me with all of these things. But I started to have these dreams. And the first one was the first night that I'd received and was listening to the Jeffrey Wolf Green's Evolutionary Astrology course, which, if people don't know already, is amazing. It is so full of information and you can follow it at home. Yeah, there's no set pace. This is what I liked. I thought, right, I'll do one a day, maybe have a weekend off. I'll be through the whole thing. It wasn't going to work like that at all because after listening to the first CD for about 10 minutes, I couldn't take a DVD, I couldn't take any more in. It's just my head was pounding like this. And I thought, right, I'll leave it. I'll do another 10 minutes tomorrow. I'll do whatever tomorrow. I'm probably just tired. I went to sleep. And although I was asleep, I just felt like I couldn't sleep. These men kept popping into my dreams and telling me things. And I didn't remember all of it, but the first thing I remember was someone trying to tell me about Saturn and Uranus. And when I shared this and I didn't tell her straight away, about a year afterwards, I had the confidence to share this experience. And I said to Kristin, I got to tell you, and it's carried on happening. And she said, do you know what? She said, the very first lecture seminar that I ever went to when Jeffrey Wolf Green was speaking was on this Easter Sunday. And she said, and the topic was Saturn and Uranus. And if I hadn't been sitting with my back against something, I think I would have fallen over backwards. There's something about this work that's different to other traditions of astrology. Something for me that reminds me of working as a shaman, something that says this work is alive. And although what we're looking at is a colorful two-dimensional chart, as you start to talk about the archetypical energies represented into it, they start to come to life. And you start to understand the narrative, the stories, what the interplay between the different archetypes is all about, what the possibilities in someone's life could be. And then, only by talking with them, you get an idea of how they might engage with that possibility or that crisis because of the place that their soul's consciousness has evolved to in their human lifetime. I'm just realizing now at 60, that I've probably only got about a third of my life left, half as much time in front of me as has gone before already. And I get a little impatient. I would like to have started this earlier, but there's a time and a place for everything, yeah? Just as there is a specific moment in time for each person and a place. And that time and place, that moment is different because of our closeness or far awayness, our relationship with the solar system. And the solar system is dynamic and interactive. Yeah, there are bits of this planet on that planet. Even if we only think about gravity, when one planet moves away in a larger orbit, its gravitational influence of the other planets is different. So they behave differently. Yeah, we know you don't need is it rocket science? Can I make that joke? Travel to the moon?
It's not rocket science.
It's not rocket science in the sense of being too complicated, but we all, I think we all feel it, whether we notice it or not, but we notice the movement towards us and away from us of the moon, our nearest neighbor. Yeah, so we know, I believe anyway, the planets have a direct effect on us day to day, moment to moment, and lifetime to lifetime. And the soul choreographs where and when to be born because it wants particular kinds of experiences. And certain places where you have certain people and certain people who will be your parents or your friends or your teachers, they will offer different kind of opportunities and environment. And from a human point of view, I look at some people's lives and I think, well, how lucky are you? How wonderful. And others, it's just like, how do you manage? And you couldn't have done anything to deserve that. How difficult that must be for you. But this, at the soul level, the soul doesn't feel or experience in the same way, although it grows through emotional experience, through the emotional body. And so it has to have a living form to be able to feel things.
Yeah.
Joe,
So,
Yeah.
I noticed that you were talking about the Saturn Uranus configuration. And
Yeah.
so I looked down at your chart and I know, from when you were born that you probably have a Uranus Pluto conjunction, but Uranus isn't in this chart. So
Where's
I'm
yeah,
guessing it's right here.
oh yeah, how did we miss that?
I just used the chart that Joe sent me.
Oh my goodness
Isn't
me.
that wild?
Do you know? I'll tell you where it is. Give me a second.
Well, I do have another chart with it in it, but I think it's interesting because before we started recording, we were talking about the Freedom from the Known book.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
It's like it's speaking to us and saying, notice I'm not here. Well, I know where it is anyway, because how did I not? Isn't that wonderful?
But that's brilliant. Uranus, the energy of Uranus is suddenly, it's sudden. So we've suddenly just realized it's not there. It is.
There we are. So when I was born is right next to my Pluto.
Right.
Yeah.
I knew that they were close. Oh, yeah, you were born as they were coming into conjunction, so balsamic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
That's funny.
And so okay, so to that where I was going with it is you were talking about the conjunction, but you were born at the opposition. So has that
Mm.
do you think that has played out in a certain way in your life, or has shown up in a certain way?
um, if we just look at Saturn for a minute, I've had very powerful, what I have experienced powerfully. Yeah, my Saturn returns, coming back to 4 degrees of Pisces. Um, Saturn returned the second time, this time was again, it's like Saturn approached 4 degrees Pisces, and I knew it was coming in the January, and then it moves past, and I was anticipating what was happening because I spent a little time looking at it, and it went past, and then it decides that's enough of that. I want to go back the way I came, and it retrogrades back, got to 4 degrees Pisces, and I felt an intensifying of things in that summer, but different to the first pass. And of course, having gone retrograde, it's got to go forward again, go direct. And we were talking about this before we started recording, how some people, Saturn or any planet moving across and its return might just kind of pass by and keep going.
Mm.
But while every planet has a big effect, Saturn has been a huge influence for me this last couple of years. And it brought me face to face with feelings and thoughts about death. Yeah. Um, it kind of began, I was driving back from Ireland. I got to the ferry, I got off in Wales this side, and I was driving back home early hours of the morning. And it turned out it was the morning of the summer solstice. And I hadn't thought about this, but I thought, yeah, it's a summer solstice. And I'm watching the sun coming up over the horizon. And I'd just been teaching my medicine wheel students in Ireland about the journey beyond death and how to guide people who are having difficulty because they had unresolved issues maybe at the point of death or they died suddenly. And I just remembered I remembered what I remembered, but I hadn't remembered this until I just thought about it now, right? My son, Tum, um, was born when I was 30, and he had his first Saturn return very close to my Saturn return. And I was thinking about him. Now, he was born just after I came back from Nepal, end of my 20s. Oh, yeah, it was just before my 30th birthday. And when I'd been in Kathmandu, I just sat down one afternoon outside the guest house, and there was this chap, Sikh guy. I remember his name was Mr. Singh, and he had these big. We didn't. This is going back to the early 90s. We didn't have. I don't know what you would have. All of those well-printed media, vinyl notice boards, portable things you can carry around with your advertising. He had a roll of wallpaper with the blank side turned out, and he had all this stuff written on there. Mr. Something Singh, son of the great Mr. Something Singh. And this was the lineage astrologers. Um, and he just asked us if we wanted to have our charts read. I think this was the first time anyone had read my chart for me. To think about it, rather than me peering into my own. And I think you can never really see what's in front of you if it's your own when you look with your own eyes. Because some things we're not ready to see, some things we're distracted by. But I remember him talking about all these different things. And then he reassured me at the end and he said, and yes, and you will die when you are this old. Now, this is the one bit of information that I've retained. Okay, over 30 something years, I remember the year he told me I was going to die. And then I didn't want to think about it because I thought, I'm just imprinting my consciousness with this. I'd seen some silly black and white movie years ago where someone had been told by the doctor they were going to die. And then the doctor's trying to find them to say, we got your test results mixed up. You're not going to die.
Oh,
But the guy died. He got hit by a car in an accident on the same day. And there's this whole interplay in the story.
that sounds like a Twilight Zone episode.
No, there's a whole movie. There's a whole movie here. But I'm riding. So a couple of years ago, early hours, summer solstice, I'm driving back. I've got my camper van, big, heavy thing. You've got to concentrate to drive it. And I realize it's not that year. This is not the year when he told me I'm going to die. And if it's not the year I'm going to die, then I'm not going to die. And I started to think about this. And while I promise, I was concentrating mostly on driving. I felt myself and the van lift up off the ground, and it was like we were flying. And I felt free from the fear of death. I knew I'm going to die one day. Of course I am. I get beamed up somewhere, right? But I think I'm going to die one day. But I knew I wasn't dying today. And I was suddenly filled with life. And I thought, what is it I want to do with these precious years? I've taken my health for granted. It's been fine. Everything, well, relationships have been a great learning experience, but lots of other things. I've always fallen on my feet. Everything in life. And I thought, what do I really want to do? And this, working with astrology as my healing tool, as my practice, as my overarching kind of cosmology. This is how the universe works, and we're all part of it. And that's what I've been trying to find a balance between my shamanic practice and healing sessions, which can be quite intense and quite demanding for me, and astrology, evolutionary astrology, which seems to attract different group of people. Many of the people I work with as a shaman want to have an understanding, why is this stuff happening to me? And people come with all sorts of difficult stories, challenging, some stories that are difficult to believe, where if they've gone to a psychiatrist, they'll be told, oh, you have delusions or psychosis. But this is the experience they are living in. And the only way is to meet them where they are. But they need some understanding. Am I mad? Or is something, am I just kind of attached? There's something in between me and the world, changing the way I see it, the way I look at it. But when people come and they're asking me about evolutionary astrology, then most people seem to be looking for a greater understanding of what their soul wants. Yes, how to serve their soul's journey, their soul's purpose. I don't recall anyone for a long time asking me, when are they going to find a husband or a wife and get married? These kinds of things, which are equally important. But what's important to one person isn't the same importance to another person at that particular point in time.
Yeah.
So, and then back in my 30s, I had this other, the first Saturn return was equally part of it focused around death. I went to see the doctor because I didn't feel right. And he said, oh, your red and white cell count is really low. Usually we only see this in this situation and that situation. Maybe you've got a very stressful job. And I'd gone on my annual yoga retreat, and something I said or did, I don't know, but it prompted one of the leaders of the workshop to come over to me and said, Joe, you're not dying at the moment. And I thought, what a strange thing to say to me. Where did that come from? But this second time was much more of a conscious relationship with it. But it's also, Saturn also represents history, doesn't it? It's the accumulation of all of the facts, of all the structure. The way our society is a product of its historical journey. And I started to begin to look back through my life and to become interested in the timeline of civilization and culture, things would land in front of me and I go, well, that's interesting. That seems to fit with that part of the picture. Um, Ancient civilizations. I thought probably as a child, my idea of history was that it all began around the time of Jesus or a little bit earlier. And that's spoken about, in the Old Testament. It all related to the kind of Christian churchy way of seeing things. But it was when things stopped making sense in that way as a teenager. I guess they hadn't made sense to me for a while. I had to go and find my own map of understanding, my own explanations.
Yeah.
Some people break away
Yeah.
in very, very rebellious ways. Their move towards their individual path is characterized by aggression. I've got to break away. I must break with you. Yeah, we must break, mum and dad, we must break friendship. I'm going to do exact opposite to prove how different I am. Well, you're not that different. But my rebellion wasn't so much, there had to be something to break away. There's books and stories, right? So they're full of these, but there is a story called Iron John. Robert Bly um, developed it and spoke about it, but it comes from a Grimm's Brothers story. It's really good to read, especially if you want to learn about the history of the masculine as an archetype. But there's a part in the story, the king and queen's son, who had golden hair, needed to get his ball back. It had fallen into the cage of a wild man in the courtyard, Iron John. And the Iron John said, you can have your ball if you get the key for the cage. And the key was hidden underneath the pillow of his mother. And the story that comes out is that your mother, with the best intention, can never set you free into manhood if you're a boy, because her role is to nourish and nurture you and to shield you from these adventurous journeys that help you to grow. So a boy will always steal what he needs to break free.
Interesting.
But there is Saturn still sitting there opposite Uranus and
Yeah.
Pluto. I think it was the next year or within a year, 6 months or so after being born, that they were exact, that they were conjunct
Mm-hmm.
before
But Joe, have you noticed your that Saturn in the ninth house
Yeah.
is conditioned by Aquarius, so it is ruled by that Uranus. So you spoke about yeah.
Aquarius is on the cusp, so it rules
Yeah.
the ninth
So it's
house.
interesting you spoke about how the dream and the Saturn Uranus seems to be a huge sort of like signpost. Saturn transits, maybe not even Uranus transits, and now Pluto's gone into Aquarius. And we'll probably have a look at your progress chart and the transit chart. It's sort of like I feel like there's still for everybody as there is, there's more work to be done, but more things to be unveiled and revealed.
Well, I'm not dead yet.
Not
Well,
today.
you not today. You have you know your date, right?
So far, I do know my year.
Well, and my thoughts on that is that can be revised. I think there are
Choice points.
you know it's a possibility. It's one possibility, and but for someone to tell you that, I find very restricting. And
Yeah. No, what I don't know if you find this, Sue, but when I'm looking at someone's chart with them or for them, what I share, oh, what's a good way of saying this? If you're speaking to two people and they're twins, yes, and they're born at the same time, but you speak to them separately, then my sense is I would talk about the chart in a different way because I'm speaking to a different person. This is identical twins or non-identical twins. It's a different soul in each of the bodies, right?
absolutely. Right,
An
Rob?
Joe,
see this.
Joe, you've met me in person. You've met my twin sister in person. You probably saw that straight away.
Yeah.
Very different.
You know, an astrologer will see this, but from the outside, our habit as Westernized human beings is to usually dress our twins and our triplets the same.
Mm.
Everyone might have a slightly different color scarf until the kids learn to take the scarves off and swap them around. But we don't see the differences. When you look at the birth chart, you see the differences in terms of potential, or you see the potential, but you don't know how that child will make choices and how the adult that they become makes the choices until you can observe, or they're old enough to ask them, when you had your first Saturn return, when you were this year old, tell me, how did you deal with that? What was going on? What choices did you make? And then we begin to understand more about the kind of way the consciousness, the it's a bit. I get tongue tied because we're talking on one level about the soul, and then about this avatar, or human body, and we're so habituated towards this is me. I'm Joe. I can look in the mirror and see myself. It's me, right? But I can't see my soul, so I can't identify with that in quite the same way. But when you're talking to someone, you're talking to the human ears that hear what you're saying with a human voice, but you're speaking to the soul. And it's the soul that informs, you know, how we are, who we are, what we do, the conscious choices that we make, um, and much more than working out what next week's lottery results are going to be by looking at the planets. I think this is much more interesting because I find it encourages me and it encourages other people to look at their life in a different way, in a bigger picture. And we see the interrelatedness of things. And our sense of our own personal significance changes. We are no longer insignificant. Yeah? We are being born at an exact time and place, the same as every other king and queen and artist and pop idol and football player and all of these things.
Yeah.
Yeah. And each one has a million potentials as well. There's all these, vectors, or however you want to. I mean, the way I look at it is each decision is a why. You go this way, and then because of that, then you have these choices. And I think that for someone to be able to say, this is what's going to happen to you on this day is silly, because I don't think it's possible.
No. But there are themes. I find there are
Exactly, and yes, and that's the point. Yeah,
the
that I wasn't making.
noticing these things, yeah. But I don't know, I can't call one to mind, but I remember here some people have had very clear, very specific interpretations. Um, it's like there is, I don't know. I'll see if I can think of one to come back to it, and then it'll be more useful, more real. But one of you'd asked me um, to think about some ways that astrology kind of informs my life and things like that, and I think that the most important thing is that it helps to shift my consciousness or other people's consciousness from having an ordinary life to having an extraordinary life.
Oh, like that.
I have a friend, Jorge Luis. He's an amazing man in Peru, a shaman and many, many other things. You watch him as a family man, he's successful. You watch him running his hotel business, he's successful. You watch him as a shaman, he's successful. He brings all these worlds together. And he loves to say, I'm sorry I'm putting this out here, Jorge, but the whole world will now know your thing that you say, which is that every time a group comes and they meet him and he says to them in his wonderful voice, what do you think is the difference between having an ordinary life and an extraordinary life? And everyone goes, well, I don't know. And someone will say, is it good health? Is it this? Is it that? And he waits a little while. He should have been on the stage. He says, you know the difference between having an ordinary, he would do this if he wore glasses, and an extraordinary life? You know the difference? It's the extra.
I love it.
Astrology gives us the extra. Yes. It's I could say I probably will have said this already over and over and over. Maybe it's just my point of view, but it's never ending. Um, we look at my chart and I see something that I haven't seen looking at it on my own. We look at my chart, I see something that someone else didn't see when they told me that they saw something. It's almost like it's fathomless. But there we go. There's my Pisces Neptune energies. It's fathomless because
Ooh.
you go as deep into the past as you care to go. And you feel, more than details, you feel themes as you go further and further back. And you can go more and more into the future. Or you can just explore your lifetime, what you know. And there will always be something extra. There will always be something more. And that's what we need to make sense of our lives. We need to understand that there is extra. And this is a great tool, a great way of living, a great cosmology to relate to astrology as an interpretive art to talk about not just why things are happening, but how. What are the dynamics? And when we understand how the dynamics work, have worked, then we can see how they're likely to work, how they're going to bringing things together, shaping things up. It's where are we? December 2024, aren't we? And is it November in the United States? You had your presidential election.
That we did.
Yeah. I mean, this is something that's going to it affects the whole world. Yeah.
Sure is.
New
Sure will.
policies, but it's 276 years since the Declaration of Independence and the formation of the United States. So that's the birth chart. So as Pluto takes the same period of time, I know everyone's been looking at what's going on, what might be possible, and the Pluto return for the United States
Right.
as identity, as a nation. So thinking about the way things expand for me, looking into the past and the future, what's brought us to where we are, deep time history, maybe ancient aliens, who knows? But I begin to wonder more about who we're becoming, and what's possible. The near future, the distant future.
Yeah.
Well, I have
Look at that list, Sue.
I have, yes, I have quite a list. And actually, we haven't talked about any of the asteroids as we've come along, but there are a few of them that have, kind of popped into my, I have Mercury square Uranus, so I get all these thoughts coming through, and most times I don't grab them and they don't come out my mouth. So then when I do try to, they get all jumbled and, so, but one of the things that I noticed when you were talking was that Isis, and it's not showing in here. Oh, yes, it is. Isis is conjunct your Mars.
Yeah.
And I think that just kind of speaks to what you've been doing, as far as we've talked kind of off screen about the divine feminine and divine masculine, and in other venues I've heard you talk about it. And I just find it fascinating that you have Isis up here, conjunct your Mars, and then Osiris conjunct your moon.
Mm.
And I mean, they kind of symbolized coming together of, divine masculine and feminine, and all the trials and tribulation, and then remembering.
Yeah. So progressed Isis is actually on Joe's North Node in Cancer.
Yes, that it is.
Yeah.
That's
So
very
opposing
true.
that South Node as well. Yeah.
Now I know where I'm going, where the brother.
Where you're headed.
I don't know what it'll look like exactly yet, but yes.
Do we ever?
Yeah, I was just about to say that. We can have an idea, but we can never know the exact. We have an idea,
Yeah.
but the exactness can sometimes not be as clear.
No. Sometimes I say to people, what's in front of us isn't the future, it's the past. We remodel what we're familiar with, just like looking at through the EA paradigm, looking
Yeah.
at the place of the moon and the nodes of the and seeing how the past life, ego identity, the moon in the last life, travels forward as a familiarity. It's
Yeah.
like saying if you liked Marmite in your last life, you're going to feel inclined to give it a try in this life. Doesn't mean you're going to like it, but you're going to feel like you should, that you want to. ISIS has certainly shown up in different kinds of work that I've done in the past. And there was a lady I met she was an American lady from Oregon, and she was in the UK, living in Glastonbury at the time, Rav. So we're talking about Glastonbury. And she had what she called oils for remembering, and she worked within what she called the Temple of Isis.
Oh.
And I had this one-to-one with her, and she gave me these oils of remembering to inhale slightly. And I was instantly traveling in my mind well, it wasn't even just in my mind. I felt like I was there in places that were different. One, there was a centaur in one, and another, I was a young child and with another young child, and we were in Egypt. I could see things that reminded me of ancient Egypt. But Isis has got, if I'm not wrong, I don't know, maybe tell me. She's a nurturing mother, but she's quite warrior-like. Wow, very fierce.
But she had magic as well, right? She embodies, hence one of her names isn't she often called the one with 1,000 names? If I'm not incorrect, I'll have to double check that, but
That's possible.
in
I mean,
terms of
it's connected. I mean, it's connected with, like Venus and,
yeah,
all of the feminine archetypes.
archetypes. Hence, a lot of the feminine archetypal goddesses, you've heard of the name the High Priestess of Isis, the initiates of the High Priestess of Isis. And yeah, so she was kind of like the first kind of energy to embody those energies. But yeah, so it's strong in your own chart, and I do not doubt, Joe, that you've had a past life in Egypt for sure. We all have, and like you said, you're just that remembrance. But yeah, that's having a
And
strong influence in your chart.
it just struck me that Isis is with Mars and Osiris is with the moon. So
Moon,
it's
the
the melding of the two, together.
yeah, yeah.
It has always struck me, thinking about those polarities of my Mars and Venus, just 10 degrees apart, both sitting close together in my 12th house. And it's just kind of those polarities, the masculine and feminine, nourishing and strong warrior protecting, these kind of things. I know that as I look at my life currently and back through relationships, I've felt that the traditional men do this and women do that. It just doesn't make any sense to me. It doesn't
Mm,
feel right to me.
mm,
Uh, but of course, it doesn't necessarily feel right if I'm in a relationship with someone and they have an expectation that the man is going to get up and is going to go and do this, or is going to disappear off all day to work, and he's not going to work at home as a shaman. And a large part, one of the most important ways I spend my time is daydreaming. Um, I think it's just
Awesome.
how else are we going to dream a new world into being together? But they've always held something for me about dissolving the
yeah,
the way that traditional gender-based roles hold me,
yeah,
or could hold me, or other
yeah.
people. You
Well, Sue, you can probably speak more on this because I know you know a little bit more about some of these asteroids. Hygeia, isn't that linked to medicine?
It is. It is. And look, I
And
was
it's
just looking at that too,
yeah,
and it's right here with in between Venus and Mars.
yeah.
Mm,
See,
Yeah, it's
finding
healing.
the medicines. Yeah,
Yeah, healing, health and healing, basically.
yeah,
yeah.
And then,
Joe, earlier
oh,
sorry, Sue, just
no, go ahead.
earlier. So yeah, earlier I had written down, it's interesting you mentioned your dreams. I had actually written down to ask you, what is your dream world like? That was one of my questions for you. What is, because I looked at your chart quickly. I know we've looked at it before in other talks.
yeah.
And for today, I was just like, dream world. And my question was, who does he talk to in his dreams? You talk about, Hygeia in Gemini in the 12th house. Sort of like you're also getting the healing knowledge via the dreams to help others. So
It's
as
like,
much as it's helping yourself,
mm,
it's yeah, remembrance of past healings or you've learned techniques you've learned,
hmm
from different civilizations and bringing it back into the current life for your role in this life to help your soul progress forward.
I had this wonderful, simple-ish dream one night, very lucid. I
Mm,
remember waking up and my eyes were soaking wet. So I think they've just been moving an awful lot. But I've been lying in bed and it was somewhere that it reminds me of places I've been in India. Yeah,
mm,
something like that. And it was like I was a little child and someone was explaining astrological concepts to me in the way that they would a little child. Um, and I can relate this to the ascendant and descendant, and also how the nodes of the moon or any planet relate to the planet. And I was lying there, and it was something like the voice. It was another, mostly it's the beings, things, voices, imaginary concepts, projections of myself, whatever it is that I connect with in dreams. They mostly have a male voice or personality to them, mostly. And this one was. And they explained if I lie in the middle of my bed, and I had to understand that the north was this way, and by my feet went to the South Pole. And they say, if you lie like that, and you look to your left side, along your left arm, so my arms are out like this. And then I start to remember this Hamsa Kriya practice I was taught, again by Philip, many, many years ago, where we would kind of work left to right. He said, anyway, the voice said, if you look to your left, what you will see is the constellation, the stars that are on the horizon at the moment you were born. And
mm,
if you look to the other side, you see the descendant. And that's all it was. And I spent the whole dream. It was like I did it all night, but it probably only took one moment. I'm looking to the left and I'm looking to the right and seeing these things and understanding that they move and they change as the solar system appears to rotate around us, but really we move around through it. And that was one
mm.
of the simplest ones. Um, but yeah, no, what I don't know really.
They
But I
sound
like
informative.
they are, they are sleep
That the
properly.
wheel of life. You were the wheel of life. You embodied the whole wheel of life.
Yeah,
Or embodying the chart, it sounds like. I mean, just kind of being inside it.
and I find it very special and important experiences. They matter a lot to me, and I feel like they've made learning easy. I wouldn't want to bang my own drum, or harp on about it or make out that I can do something other people can't do. I just think I've been fortunate to have about 4 or 5 years where I haven't slept properly any night. You just have to catch up later with catnaps. But someone has to go. Someone has to go through the door, past the fence, off the reservation, just to land that other people haven't walked and come back and say, there's something there, there's something extra, there's something different, whether it's traveling the land or what we discover in our dreams. It doesn't have to mean that it's more authentic or more reliable or valuable than anything else, just that there's extra information there. And just bringing it back, astrology is this all the time, you know?
Talking about cat naps. Sue,
Mm,
where is Asteroid Kitty?
Oh, let's see.
it's written as Kit, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, there it is. 27 degrees Virgo
In my birth chart in the middle.
in the
Oh,
fourth
yeah.
house.
Yeah.
It is right here.
Yeah.
And progressed, it's here. And
Transit.
transit, it's in
Oh, second
down here.
house. Yeah.
With karma, transiting with karma.
Oh yeah, yeah, both at 16 degrees of Leo.
Yeah.
Retrograde.
And let's see.
So I know I've mentioned this to you. We will be doing a talk, me and Sue, on the asteroids. Well, we'll just to talk about some of our favorites, because we talk about them every week, the ones that we do know of. But like, there's so many. It
Yeah.
just adds so much more flavor to the chart, right?
Well, and also look at this. Here's Venus and Osiris over here, and Isis. Isis and Osiris just met up in about where Ceres is now, early Aquarius. And here's Chariclo, who is Chiron's wife, and holds space for processes to occur, is here in Aquarius. I think it just seems like we've had all of this, all of these escorts of Pluto into Aquarius here lately. It's been really fascinating to watch. Oh, and look, you're about to have a Chariclo return as well, because you've got Chariclo in Aquarius too.
27. Yeah, 27 degrees.
And progressed also.
But still
Yeah.
retrograde.
Oh, and the other one that I was noticing, Hermes or Mercury, is here by transit on your progressed Saturn, and approaching your Saturn. So you're talking about this. I'm really fascinated by your interpretation of Saturn in Pisces, and how it's played out for you, and how and how you're able to speak it, to tell us, how it has happened.
Do you know, I feel like the second Saturn return is still having a continuing influence. So where's Saturn now?
Saturn is now at a
What
13
degree?
degrees.
We're in the outer circle. The outer circle, the current transits.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, the outer circle is the transits. The middle circle is your progressions, and the inner circle is your natal chart.
So I my memory, right? I don't know how good my memory is. I like to think that memory is very subjective and fallible. But when I think about my health through my life, I think, based on my memory as I remember it, that I've always had good health and kind of taken my health for granted. And this year, I have had so many queries, questions, doubts, anxieties about my health. I have had blood coming from places where it shouldn't be coming. I have had lumps growing in places where they shouldn't grow. I've been bumped to the front of so many lists to go and have things cut out. It was inside my nose, this thing, and other things happening in other places, and all of these tests. The great thing is it's all free, including the NHS here. It would have cost me a fortune if I'd had to have my own medical care.
Mm.
And they all brought me to the point of thinking, oh dear, perhaps this is the beginning of something fatal. And even up to last summer a year ago, something's going on with my gut, my intestinal system, and it just got, let's just say, it got very good at releasing everything. All right, and I think this is all part of my Saturn process because I felt totally well on the inside. This summer, I thought I got to go and see I haven't seen a family doctor for years and years and years and years, but I hadn't needed to go. And then suddenly all these things are happening. And you know what? Every single test came back normal. Nothing.
Yay.
Blood fine, no cancer, liver fine, kidneys fine, everything fine. The doctor even gave me a very personal physical examination and said, even that's fine, Mr. Molloy.
Yay.
Yeah, good news.
That is. And and it all comes back to, the worry. I think the worry of Saturn, maybe, and perhaps now it's being released as as you, I mean, because the second Saturn return is about figuring out, kind of evaluating how far you've come, and then looking at how you're going to spend the final third of your life.
Yeah. Yeah. Could be more than a third.
Yeah, it could be. We never know.
It's the next age, isn't it? It's the next.
Mhm. Yeah, it's the next Saturn.
Yeah, my next
The
regeneration.
next lessons, right? Saturn, the teacher.
Oh yeah,
The
I'm
next.
more lessons and more learning and more, tripping over my own feet, thinking, God, how did I not see that? How did I not remember that? It's fabulous. Stuff is in front of me all the time, and I go, oh yeah, now I see it clearly. You can't. There's a time and a place to be born. There's a time and a place for each of these regenerations. There's a time and a place to see things, for new questions. And
Yeah.
something somewhere knows how to put it in order so that it makes sense. I'm not going to say what
Beautiful.
something is, and we've got so many different names for this something, and it could just be gravity. Yeah, if you don't believe in anything more. Actually, if you don't believe in anything more than we're born and we live and we die, and there's no sort of sacred spirit, special, creative other that might create scientifically. Why not? You know? Oh, anyway, I kind of think
Yeah.
this, and it has a hand. And it's
Yeah.
lovely to watch just how it's like an orchestra, how it all comes together.
That is how I describe. That's how I describe the looking at your natal chart with your progressions, with the transits. It is like an orchestra,
Yeah. Or maybe it's
A
more like
symphony being played.
symphony orchestra. Yeah.
Yeah.
It it
Perfect.
reforms, deforms. It's like jazz. It's not
Yeah.
the same story, or it's the same story but played differently.
Yes.
And you do have transiting Saturn will very soon go over your you're all hooked into this Jupiter, Saturn, Mercury.
I'm waiting for the next bits. I've had
uh,
a bit of a rest now, so I'm waiting for the next exciting.
yeah.
I might not say that when it happens.
Want to go in your 10th house.
Stop.
Well, no, and as Rob said, it's that Saturn can also be mastery,
Mm.
and teaching, and mastery of a subject, and being the
The
authority.
skills. Yeah, the skills you've learned and coming into the public, more into the public domain. 10th house.
Oh, you know what my interest as an aside as an astrologer, it's not stayed there. It really has this last 6 months or last year as we just come more and more to the front, and I find myself being approached by people for readings and interpretations because they like the way I've described the style I have or the way I see things. And
Yeah.
there are so many people who are more experienced, who've practiced more, seen more charts, done more courses, definitely read more books. I buy books. I look at the first few pages. I might look at the last few pages, and then generally it takes a place of prestige and respect on my bookshelf. And the cat, my little asteroid, Willow, the kitty cat, she goes and looks at it. And they stay. And
Well,
it's
my
just,
question that's going to come up soon is going to be interesting then.
books. You want to know about books?
Yes.
We've got to keep
Books.
people's interest because they've been watching us for a while now.
So
Yes, yes.
you teased about writing a book. Is that something that's in your
Oh, well, I've written one. I've got one available through Amazon, so it's a self-publishing thing. And it was so lovely to do that.
oh, what? So
Joe, what's it called?
yeah, tell us.
Called Munay Key. I'll have to stand up to get a copy. I've got a copy behind me. Do you mind? Can you excuse me? You'll see my bottom for a minute, but I am wearing trousers.
Yay!
It's not one of those videos.
And we will put all of this information into the description of the video. So
Yeah.
So
Ah,
when you buy it, we'll have a new cover because I've now used some of the photos that I took in the Andes. It's not a big book, right? In terms of being a short book reader, if you're like me and you like it short, then this has only got, it's got under 50 pages.
so he's
And it
selling it now, right now. This is his Gem 9 coming out.
yay!
talks about, there's lots of little stories and they're short. Otherwise, it'd be a long
Lovely.
book. But it talks about the
Joe, what's it
cosmos.
called? The Lineage of?
Munaiki,
Right. Oh,
lineage.
I'll be getting that.
Oh,
Perfect. Not that I need more books in my life, but more books are welcome, always. On
I'm
that
on.
note, Joe,
Yes,
on that
book.
note, so aside from astrology books and aside from Autobiography of Yogi, because you've mentioned it, can you just tell the audience maybe one or two books that's inspired you in your life that's not astrology related that you feel it would help people to read? So something that you've enjoyed.
Okay. I'm going to say this is a great astrology book. It's not a not astrology book. This book, written by
It
Deva,
is.
right? If you're going to buy one astrology book, buy this one.
oh, wow.
Yeah,
It's
it's
easy
good.
to read. The way she talks, the way she writes, sounds like the way she talks. It's just easy to read, and it will get you started. It focuses on the moon and the moon's nodes, but it's such a key part of evolutionary astrology. Anyway, onto the non-astrology books.
Says the Cancer rising.
Here it comes. Sue, you're a bit younger than me, but you probably know this book. Rav, you work
I'm
with.
older than you, Joe.
Are you?
I by quite a bit, yes.
Leave Sue either, Joe. So don't. Yeah.
Ready? So, of all the books, those who are watching think it's going to be, it is another small book, and it is this book,
Oh,
Jonathan
Yes.
Livingston Seagull by Richard Bach. this book, right? There's an inscription to me on the inside.
Oh, wow.
Right? To Joseph
From an
Molloy,
old, yeah.
from an old man who is just beginning to see things the way they are.
Aw.
I was probably around about 12. And my dad had a friend, Hans Jensen. He's a very big Bavarian man. And he actually did play accordion for, what do they call it? Morris dancing. Men with sticks hitting themselves, this sort of thing. And Hans and my dad used to sit. And look, Ray Bradbury's written on the front. Ray Bradbury, people will know.
Oh,
right?
wow, yeah.
This
Yeah,
book
that
came-
was a big book in the 70s.
It still sells very well
Does it?
today.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm.
Hans gave this to my dad to let my sister and myself read. So he brought some photographs of seagulls and things in there. Brought it home for us to read, and I never got round to it. Was not interested until my sister had read it, and my dad took it back to work. Gave it back to Hans, and I said, "Oh, where's the book?" No, I gave it back to Hans. Oh.
Oh,
Days later, the book arrives back with the little inscription. And this book is a beautiful little book, and this did change my life. You know, I think it worked in a powerful, connected, subconscious way, because I don't know why it changed my life. I know it talks about, in a way, it doesn't talk about Jonathan the seagull dying, but he transitions into another life form. Anyway, you want to read one, read this one, and there are loads of other books, a few other books he's written that are also really good.
Mm.
And then where was I? In my early 20s. And as if by accident, I connected with this guy, Dusty Miller, who's died now. His son's also called Dusty Miller, and he carries on his work. But this was back in the mid-80s, 1980s. YouTube's going to be around forever, so we have to say 1980s, because, you know,
right.
it's going to be the 80s again in another 60 years. I'll be 120 then. So Dusty said, this is a book he read. And he said, you want to read it too? Okay. And, it's at the
Oh,
top.
Prometheus Rising. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
Prometheus Rising. You know, Prometheus, in Greek mythology, he stole fire from the gods. How naughty is that?
Yeah.
Gave it to people, and we had fire. But there's
And
all different kinds of fire.
Richard Tarnas attributes it to Uranus. Prometheus, kind of
Yes.
parallel.
Oh, I'm trying to stick with the book, but
Yeah, exactly. Sorry. My Gemini moon bounces.
And I just keep on talking in response.
Of course, because you have Venus and Mars in Gemini.
Right? But those who like it will love it. It's written by Robert Anton Wilson, who you'll know from the Illuminati. Yes, the books, Illuminati papers, Schrodinger's cat, other wonderful things he's written. I think he's passed from this life now. But it's full of, you know, quirky little drawings and things like metaprogramming.
Oh.
And one line in there, and it asks you, all right, you ready? Come up with your quick answer. Are you your software or your hardware? It's full of things like that. That was a good book. That got me started on thinking differently about the things I was thinking about. Not necessarily thinking differently about what I was thinking about. And it also happened early 80s. I was doing my nurse training. I had massive exposure to psychotherapy, reflexology, drama therapy, everything. It's just like started in 1986. The doors opened like that. Everything changed. Massive exposure. So we should go back. This is going to be another, I should write this list down. Key points in my life.
Yeah. Yes. That would be a good part two is to go through progressions, and I would love to do that.
If you want to know if there's anything to astrology or not, it's a really good way to do it.
It is. It really is.
you already know where the key events in your life were. And if you map those up, you can go, was it astro.com, AstroSeek? You do free charts. Don't have to
Yeah,
pay.
Astro.
They'll keep it for you, and you go back and look at it, and other things like this. But you can track all of those events and just look at
Yeah.
which planets are close, which ones are at
Yeah.
90 or 180 or nice harmonious 120s or 30s. And you begin, sometimes people have a resistance, I think, and maybe I do, in accepting something that is someone else's idea. I need to have the sense of my own discovery, my own original thought.
Mhm.
I think a lot of people are like that. And this is where it's part of how we evolve and we move away from being too tightly held
Mm.
by the structures around us, Saturn, our consensus reality.
Yes,
No,
yeah. I was about to say
we,
consensus world. Yeah.
yeah, we have to live in it. I have this body, and however spiritual, right? Spiritual I get, I've still got to live in this body. I've got to feed it. I've got to look after it. But
Mhm.
hopefully I've got enough life experience, enough lifetimes experience to understand a bit about how to be in this world, even though I might think that I'm not totally of this world. Yeah, you have to. If you're here, you're here. You can't avoid. You
That,
can avoid it, but it will be at your peril. I don't
that's your
need.
Saturn and Uranus. Your Saturn, Uranus. So you're deconditioning from the no. Freedom
Yes.
from the no.
How far apart? How far apart are my Saturn and Uranus? They've got this.
7
What is it?
degrees or something. We can,
Was it? It's an opposition, isn't it?
It is. I just. Which way is it going? Which one's? Oh, so Saturn is
So you
fast.
start with the outer planet. So Uranus moving towards Saturn. Sorry, Uranus moving towards Saturn.
So anyone watching this bit, if you hung in this long, this is how you work out the relationship,
The
the sort of,
phasal relationship, yeah.
yeah,
So
phasal
we go
relation.
from Uranus anti-clockwise. So it's gonna be it's actually
Not quite 180 degrees, is it?
it's in the it's in the what phase is that? Crescent phase? No, not crescent phase.
you're talking
In my map.
Uranus and Pluto?
It's not quite.
No,
So
Saturn.
Oh,
give us a
Saturn. Okay. Saturn and Uranus.
Yeah.
They
My mind's gone
are
blank with the
they are
phasal
approaching an opposition.
opposition. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So
I have it here. It's a gibbous phase. Yes.
that's it.
yeah.
My mind just went blank. I couldn't even think of the phase.
Same.
You're
This
around.
uh,
You're looking back at where you're starting
Oh,
from.
because it's building up to the fall phase. It hasn't reached the fall phase yet.
right. Yeah.
So you're in that gibbous phase. So it's that humility and humbling and you're in the transition phase actually, Joe. So this lifetime is a big transitional stepping stone for the soul.
Well, when I'm still
You
humble and before I come back next
you
time.
will
You
Yeah.
I mean,
Just ready to burst forth.
But this is another lovely part of evolutionary astrology, its way of looking at of what's going on in people's lives. Is that it's not a competition, yeah? It's not about starting at two planets together and one racing ahead and it's finished, gets to the end.
yeah,
It's not about the destination. It's about the journey because each of those, um, if people can look at the chart in front and just imagine, forget all the details and just divide it into 8 pieces of cake, 4 on
yeah,
this side, underneath, and 4 above, and then divide and imagine that 2 planets are always going to be in a relationship where one is at the starting point at the 9 o'clock on the clock position, and so it'll be in the first quarter, the second, the third, fourth, the 8th quarter, and the soul needs to explore each theme that it's chosen for its evolution in each different stage of relationship. There's
yeah.
not a
Yeah. And each pair of planets have their own relationship, which
Mm.
has layers upon layers of lessons to
Yeah,
be learned.
because if you look talking about the Saturn Uranus, if you link it to Pluto, Joe, your Pluto in Uranus, it's in a balsamic phase.
it
So
is,
you're
yeah.
closing a cycle.
This is just coming. It's coming up from the other hand, coming up from behind.
Yeah, you literally you're at that closing phase of relationship between those two planetary dynamics in the third house in Virgo. So it's interesting how every planet has, like you said, Sue, its story, but it's all ingredients to that one cake, shall we say,
Yeah.
that's being
And
created.
we're the cake.
We're the cake. Oh, great.
I only have those two books. I've got loads of astrology ones here, but I've only had those
Do you want to
two.
throw one to the audience? I'm not mean, Joe. Tell the audience about an astrology book. Of course, Deva's book, which is brilliant.
Mentioned that a minute ago.
Yeah.
You do.
That you did.
From my personal experience, I mean, the first big one was Pluto, first volume, but I found it not the easiest to follow in the beginning. It
Uh-huh.
can help to have, oh, I don't know. I mean, anyway, for me, it did
Mm.
sit for quite a while. And then I
Mhm.
thought, actually, now I need to know this. But this book, all right, the glossary,
Mm.
Oh, yeah.
I don't
It's
know
the
if
Bible for me.
this book, right, it seems to be a collection of all of Jeffrey Wolf Green's teachings, but many of them presented through the voices and words of other students of evolutionary astrology.
It is. It's all of the it's a lot of the message board, the EA message
Yeah.
board. And it was
Oh,
compiled by Linda Johnson. And she worked really hard to get that out. And it is an awesome tool.
I don't
Yeah.
know any of it. I haven't read the whole world of books, but it's brilliant.
It's a great reference resource as well, Joe, right? Like
Nice.
you have a query in your head, you just it every question I feel, even myself to this day, I'm certified evolutionary astrologer, but to this day, that book is my go-to. I to remind myself of something. Okay, where was that? Okay, what has been said about this dynamic? And it's just, yeah, it's like I said, it's my Bible, and it's something that I yeah, it's everybody should have a copy of it. Anyone interested in evolutionary astrology, any questions that pop up into the head,
This one
yeah,
here.
it's been
Yeah.
answered.
It's funny showing this to you. I'm just saying that I don't get anything other than the satisfaction of knowing that people getting this book will have access to an amazing resource, and it's so
Yeah,
well in and so comprehensive and so easy to
yeah,
read.
Yeah.
Don't
yeah,
you can read from one end to the other and take it all in. Be my guest, and I'll
yeah,
phone you. And tell me, but it's so dip in and outable, isn't it? Like you say, as a
yeah,
resource.
yeah, yeah.
So I have one more little before I unshare your chart. I have one little observation that I also wanted to add, and that was of our friend Lucifer up here, also next to your
This is not
moon.
the TV Lucifer, not the series thing. No.
Right. Which I find fascinating because that you I had seen the Netflix series Lucifer, and you picked right up on it. So
Yes. I've do you know
I've
I'm
even written quotations down from that. One of which I just found when I was looking through a journal was we create our worst fears. And I thought,
Mm,
whoa, that's pretty Luciferish.
it's certainly
Luciferish, I like that.
but
Lucifer.
but
Luciferish.
I also sense that you have a sense of humor about Lucifer. Thus, the fact that you were willing to, and looking into the satirical, I guess, Netflix series. But how do you see this?
All right. So a very quick book. The Uranus is about freedom from the known.
Aha.
And what we tell ourselves we know is what we believe we know. Yeah. So we tell ourselves what we're familiar with. And there are only a couple of narratives that exist in the world that I'm aware of, certainly my world, about who Lucifer is or was or is supposed to be. And so we have to make sense of the world around us to feel safe, secure, to know which way is up and down. If I want to look for the east, I have to know which way. We need information. And then we take that information in and we treat the information as if it's fact. And then we build our world around it. So we have two stories, and one comes from, I suppose they're both from the same origin. They're both Judeo-Christian mythologies about Lucifer, interestingly known as Lucifer Morning Star, and the morning star we were speaking about is Venus. And Venus is also the pink moon. Yes, do you know that?
The pink moon?
Pink moon, yeah,
Mm.
pink Spanish. Pink, it's, yeah, well, it's got its little, sometimes it's the morning star, sometimes it's the evening star.
Right, yeah, depending on it's
where we are or where we both are in relation to each other.
Yeah.
It gets combusted. You can't see it once the sun gets too strong if it's on that side in the morning. And at other times we've got to wait for the sun to come down so that the sky is dark enough to see it. But yeah, we have this idea that Lucifer is the devil and the devil is this. And it's all about punishment and torture. And in the story, what comes out of it is how actually Lucifer, the character in the series, is angry about being sent to do these things because he's been seen by people as being what we think of as the devil. Yeah. When really he was just doing, in his understanding, and in the way it's portrayed in the series, he's just doing what his father asked him to do. And that was to take on the most incredibly difficult task. So you have to choose the person that you think is going to be able to do it and tolerate it and actually do a good job at it. But what a challenging job to spend all of eternity facing people towards a mirror that shows them every choice they made that has taken them knowingly out of integrity with themselves. Yeah, I could talk about morality, but people have different moralities. But we know when we are in line with or in opposition to our own personal sense of right and wrong. Yeah. And so that was in the series, was his job. But he got fed up of that and he decided to come topside. Los Angeles, what a better place to go, the city for Lucifer Morningstar, you know. And his journey becomes a journey of discovery, change, and evolution and growth too.
That it does. Well, and and Lucifer is also the light bringer.
Yeah, the bearer of light.
Yeah. Light and dark, always hand in hand somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. This has been fun. Oh, wait, I do have one
This question.
my final question is kind of wrapped up in two. Because you kind of hinted that that you were writing a book, but also okay, so do you have any astrology related projects in the works? But also, what do you do in your spare time?
Would be nice to have some. Well, we've got a few chickens. I've got 3 chickens. It's not a lot. Some people will say there's not really having chickens unless you've got 20 or 30. I've got 3 chickens. We've got 2 cats, 2 dogs. And I spend a lot of my time with the chickens, the cats, and the dogs, or talking to them.
Aw,
And
me
it's
too.
productive, yeah. Yeah. You know, whether it's Asteroid Kitty or my kitty cat. I like being in nature. We're really blessed where we are here, that we're on the edge of a village. We're 15 minutes drive and we get to a town with a supermarket. So we've got all of that stuff. But it's not on our doorstep. We're surrounded by ancient lime woodlands, a little river. And so it's easy to be in nature. And I think it is so, for me, excuse me, so nourishing. I don't know if I have any spare time. I think what I have, people might think of as spare time, I think of as time when I'm, uh, I don't know, pottering, doing things, chopping wood, sawing down trees. This sounds quite industrious, doesn't it? It's just fun.
Yeah,
Talking
to me, it's whatever whatever it gives you joy. You know, what it, no.
What brings you Joseph Campbell? You know this guy,
Mm.
Joseph Campbell. He said a few things that really impressed me. One thing he said, following on from that, is follow your bliss. All right. That should be your spare time.
Mm.
Following your bliss. Follow your bliss. And doors appear where before there were only walls.
Nice.
Beautiful.
My spare time things become my full-time things usually.
Exactly. Well, yeah, and what there was another quotation, oh, maybe in the 90s, you know, follow your bliss and the money will follow, or, you know, follow your heart and the money. I don't know. I forget what it was, but it was something to the effect that, you know, do what your heart tells you to do. And then if
So it doesn't feel like work, right? So you're living every moment without feeling like you're working.
Mhm, mhm,
Yeah, that's
exactly.
how life should be.
Amen, sister.
Yeah, I think my life has been. I've always found myself doing things that I love or loving what I do. And
Yeah.
if you don't love your life can't love you back the same way. So
Good
Oh, I
point.
like that.
Very good point. Yes, I love it. And on that note, we will look forward to part 2. And this has been so much fun. Thank you so much, Joe.
I've been
Yes,
looking forward
thank
to this
you.
for so long, and thank you for and yeah, yeah. I get
No,
ready with
thank
it.
you for sharing your journey, Joe. Thank you for sharing your journey with the audience and
Yeah.
just, showing how life has a way of opening doors when you are open to it.
Yeah.
If anything I've said helps anyone who's been watching, then I'm glad I've done it. You know.
Love it. Thank you.
Thank you.